And I also understand in the 70s of the I was born in the 70s before the radar gun song, having fun, fun with my radar gun and my new police job with my radar gun. That song came out in high school in the 90s. Because before that, when I was a little kid, I realized as a 2 or 3 or 5 year old going to town that in the 50s, which I was not born in the 50s, but born in the late 70s, that there was no radar guns for police then, but they started getting them, when I was a kid. But back then, you had to be directly behind a police officer. You'd have to be speeding a lot. If you're just going 2 or 3 miles over the speed limit, cops were messing with you as a dad, unless you had an obvious tail light or something like that that would cause a car accident pile up. But other than that, cops, if you were speeding and one looking in your rearview mirror, and you were doing like 15, 10 mile and over, the cop would have to be right behind you, like when you didn't realize it, not looking in your rearview mirror, for him to be exactly behind you to the ratio of your speed to clock you and know how much fast you were going to write you a ticket. And back then, in the 50s, if you were just, because they couldn't really clock you exactly on how fast you were going unless you weren't looking. But if you lived in LA and you were dad or something, you could say, I don't know, this cop's messing with me. I have a really super nice car, and he's trying to beat me up, mess with me because of whatever. But as you know, that was like in the early '80s as a kid, because if miles per hour. My one landlady I used to live with, she told me, she said, let's say you're going to a doctor and you're late for a school, or you're going to a doctor, you're late for work. You'd have to be an hour away. You'd have to be traveling 60 miles to go to work. And if you drove 65 that whole hour, you'd get to work 5 minutes early. And she's right. You know what I'm saying? But in the late 50s, I guess if you're a gangster running guns, and a cop, had some souped up car running guns, he'd have to be exactly behind you to clock your speed. And he might have been messing with you because you were a gangster and you were running guns. But other than that, if you're a mom in the 80s, driving 15 mile an hour over, and your kid's not in the car seat, they're in the back seat or whatever, in their seatbelt, and you're not even looking, you're doing 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, and the cop was behind you, and you weren't looking in your rear mirror, just blast with the radio in your hair, the cop would be exactly behind you, at one car length exactly, not moving. Then he could guesstimate that you're doing 15 miles an hour over. But that'd take like a half mile for him to realize that. But if you were always looking and he was like on your ass and you were only doing 2 or 3 miles an hour, you'd be like, man, my speedometer's, you're messing with me. I'm in protest in court. But in the early 80s, they started having mirrors and stores and security cameras at the mall, at the stoplights. And then that song came out when I was like 14. It was kind of a catchy song because you'd hear it everywhere. Play at the gas stations or McDonald's or restaurants or commercials on TV. I don't remember who sang it. It was some B-side band or whatever with a one-hit wonder. But they said, I'm a cop and I'm at a new job and I'm having fun with my radar gun. I'm making money, my minimum wage, a job, and at least I have a job, Like always, I quit and go around the block and work at McDonald's or something, or the hardware store or whatever, and wait for some granny to come in on a Sunday and ask for a 2-inch screwdriver if I didn't fall asleep at my job,